counters.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, I was fooled too. But then Joe popped up and it said Warren Bernard under that. And I'm like, oh, it's like one of those old soap operas. And the role of Warren Bernard is being played by Joe Mokabi.
Yeah, I just realized that my coffee is like out of reach.
You want to get it? I just finished a cup.
Yeah. I'm gonna grab it really fast.
Yes. Got to have your coffee.
When he returns, you guys can go ahead and start it up.
Okay. Yeah, I was just looking for the. Live now. Here we go. Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the Red, White, Black, and Blue highlighting America's racial literacy panel. I am Ulysses Campbell, and I have the great privilege to introduce the person who is actually conducting this panel. He is a cartoonist, he is a humorist, he is shockingly a rapper. He's also a recent TV producer, which is really great. He is Keith Knight, and let's welcome him. Keith. Okay. Keith is out there somewhere.
I think he stepped away to get something to drink, so.
Oh, all right. I thought I had seen him come back. It might be the delay or in any case, Keith has been doing this for a long time, but he has recently gotten even more acclaim because, as many of you may know, on September 9th, his new television series debuted on Hulu. It is called Woke, and it's somewhat loosely based on Keith's life and his experiences, but it's been very well received. And in fact, I think pretty much anywhere you look right now, particularly because of the social context, you see something of Woke and Keith and the wonderful performers who are starring in this show. But it's come along at a perfect moment because Keith has been talking about social justice issues for a long time, and the rest of us seem to have finally caught up with him in terms of this show. And it has, I described it sort of like the strike of lightning, because this is truly a very timely series, and it just regrettably could not have come along at a more advantageous time in terms of what is transpiring socially. Anyway, I'm Keith can explain it and talk about it so much better than I can. Hopefully he's back by now. Keith?
Yes.
Take it away. There we are.
I am back and ready to rock. Thanks for SBX having me do this again. This is similar to the slideshow I did last year, although I think a lot more people are paying attention this time around. So let's just jump into it, okay?
Yeah. Oh, real quick, before you do that, I just need to let people know that we're going to do the slideshow first, and that's going to be followed by a Q&A. And if you do have questions during the Q&A, you can actually type your questions out on the YouTube page, and Keith will see them, and I'll read them aloud, and then he will answer them. And that's the way that we'll do it. And it's going to be great.
Excellent. Yeah, so this slideshow is called Red, White, Black, and Blue, which is the name of my first Think anthology. And I am very into recycling. So I recycle gags, I recycle titles all the time. But I just think it's apropos. Red, White, Black, and Blue just seems to be what this America is all about. And so let's just jump into it. Since Sign the Knot a year and a half ago, a lot of readers have been asking me this question. Has this once macho he-master gone all soft now that I'm a married man? The answer is yes, I've gone all soft and supple. It's true. The best thing about getting hitched is being able to use all your wife's girly products in the bathroom. Stuff I wouldn't be caught dead buying in public. Okay, let's see. We've got some anti-crab ointment, anal wart remover, and a peach melba loofah scrub. Shh, not so loud with the loofah scrub. That's right, people. No more scrubbing the nether regions with lava soap for me. We've got rosemary and aloe vera eucalyptus leaves infused with hibiscus shampoo, organic sea kelp and lamb semen exfoliating wash, colloidal oatmeal, and placenta enema. Honestly, y'all, using this stuff does make a difference. A lot of folks have been noticing. Gee, your skin feels terrific. So this is my strip that I've been doing for nearly 30 years now. This is the K Chronicles. It's an autobiographical strip that I started back in college, but it really didn't hit the format that it is until I got to San Francisco in the early 90s. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am from Boston, and Boston, when I was growing up, this was the most famous photo out of Boston. And what you see is a lot of white people. You see a person with the flag, and then you see a black man in a suit about to get stuck by that flag. And this was during busing protests of the 70s, when white people didn't want black students being bused to their schools. And this black man is a lawyer here. If you ever look up the story behind this photo, there's some really interesting stuff because the people involved in it are interviewed about it. But this is sort of, how I grew up, which is in this sort of volatile community. And I never had a black teacher growing up in my first 12 years of school. I had a substitute teacher that was a black teacher, but never a black teacher who ran the class. It wasn't till I was a junior in college, and I had an American literature teacher, and this was my first black teacher. And when he assigned authors, he assigned Ralph Ellison, Richard Wright, Maya Angelou, and James Baldwin. And so people were like, why are you giving us all black writers? And he said, I'm giving you all American writers. And right then, that blew my mind because we're taught as kids, what is American literature? Oh, that's Mark Twain. And so this guy, what I loved about it, he was working within the system to subvert the system. And so from that moment on, I really felt like, okay, instead of doing comics about keg parties, I want to mix in comics of what it's like to be black in America. So, usually my strips start out with some average thing that happens to me, but then it spins out in some different way that sort of makes a hard statement. I like to use humor, but I also like to punch you in the face. So it's like jab, jab, humor, jab, jab, humor, jab, jab, humor, boom. So yeah, this is dedicated to that one black kid, the K Chronicles by Keith Knight. This is dedicated to that one black kid who lives in that tiny ass town up the highway in the middle of nowhere. This is dedicated to that one black kid who was not into hip hop in high school. Black Sabbath's not black, This is dedicated to that one black kid who gets used as the reason why someone isn't a racist. I can't be prejudiced. My mom invited one to my 13th birthday party. This is dedicated to that one black kid with hair people want to touch all the time. Back off. Is it like a Brillo pad? This is dedicated to that one black kid who gets told they're not really black. Yo, man, brothers don't do what you do. Hey, it's a compliment coming from me. This is dedicated to that one black kid who always gets asked by white folks why they can't use the N-word. Why ask me? I don't use it, but you could if you wanted to. This is dedicated to that one black kid who wonders if they measure up to the myth. This is dedicated to this one black kid. So this is one of my most popular comics and prints. This is like Black People Bingo. It's like, everyone looks at it and black folks go, oh yeah, that happened to me, that happened to me, that happened to me. Oh, bingo, and then they can draw it across. But this is like a universal thing full of just, microaggressions. I never knew they were called microaggressions growing up, but that's what they're called, lots of microaggressions. This is another one of my favorite ones. It always amazes me the way people react when they first enter my bedroom. Holy smokes, what the hell are you doing with that blow-up doll? The K Chronicles by Keith Knight. Folks are often surprised to find a Feel Me Up Wilbur doll in my bedroom, although I don't know why. Tickle Me Elmo may be the #1 doll for America as a whole, but Feel Me Up Wilbur has been selling like hotcakes in the Black community. They come in quite handy, although not for the use the manufacturer had originally intended. Taxi, and he's thinking black man equals stabbed in back, off duty, off duty. But wait, look, black man plus white guy equals okie dokie. Get the hell in here, boys. You see, because 5 black men standing on a corner without Wilbur is a gang. But 5 black men standing on a corner with Wilbur is a basketball team with a coach. They're banned in Boston, so I bought a few to send to my friends back east. Oh my God, look, it's Hootie and the Blowfish. So that's what I do is I take a situation. This one came out of the time I was in San Francisco and I was trying to catch a cab and I couldn't catch one. And then a white coworker I saw on the street in the Mission, she came over and stood next to me. And then I caught a cab just like that. Now with Uber and Lyft, cabs come running to me trying to get my attention, which I love. That's why I like taking cabs now, because they all want me, and it's nice to be wanted. Anyway, in 1999, I was asked to do a second cartoon, and so they wanted an autobiographical strip similar to the K Chronicles. It's like, why do I want to do that again? A multi-panel? Why do I want to do that again? I want to do a single panel that comes out of the news, and that way I can take these takes and ideas that I have from the news and put it in a cartoon. So I came up with Think. And what's interesting about Think, and I realized this about 5 years ago, that Think spelled backwards is my last name without the G. And I never knew that until like 5 years ago. So I thought that was pretty cool. But what I love about this logo is it kind of looks like Snoopy. It kind of looks like Charles Schulz, the way he draws Snoopy. And honestly, if I try to draw Snoopy, I could never get the shape of it that well. And for some reason, the dot on the eye and the parentheses looks like his ear. So like, maybe I smoke too much marijuana. Okay, so anyway, I'm gonna jump through these single panels really quickly. Denny, serving black since 1997, if science told the truth. This is the very first Think strip that I did. I actually came into the meeting to pitch it, and this was drawn on a bar napkin. And they said, yep, let's do it. Your sister had the baby, it's a boy. The exact moment radical black activist Thomas X realized that, yes, indeed, he was an Uncle Tom. What was promised? 40 acres and a mule. What was got? 40 ounces in a pit bull. This just in, police have released the description of the alleged gunman who's been terrorizing the downtown area. Please don't let it be a black guy. Please don't let it be a Middle Eastern guy. Ha, they'll never catch me. Ah, the power of white privilege. A screening for women only, that's discrimination. I demand entry. Hey, Louise, we got another snowflake wanting to get a pap smear. Send them in. The penis monologues with Will Chamberlain, Jimi Hendrix, and Milton Berle. How was it? Way, way too long. Look it up, all you young kids. Look this up. You're doing this because I'm black, aren't you? Oh, now see, why do you always have to play the race card? So let's talk about this, the race card. Black on black crime. Get over it. It was a long time ago. What about reverse racism? So these things are what white people say to avoid a conversation about what is, I believe, is the biggest problem in America, not only today, but forever, which is its race problem. This country was founded on a lot of people working for nothing. a lot of people being treated as less than human. And that legacy carries on to today. We have not dealt with that. America needs to have that conversation. And unfortunately, that conversation is dictated by how comfortable white people feel, which they get uncomfortable after 5.2 seconds. And then they start saying, oh, why do you always have to play the race card? Why do you always have to do this? Here's the thing. We didn't come up with the race card. You came up with the race card. Like that's, you know, white people came up with the race card and we're just the ones who suffer from it. And so people need to understand that in order for us to get past this, we need to address the elephant in the room. And I'm not saying the Republican Party, but that elephant actually works pretty well as a metaphor. Anyway, usually the conversation about race goes like this. One night at Ye Olde gallery opening, frankly, I don't care if a person is black, white, green, purple, or brown. Me too. Who the heck are all these green and purple folks white folks are always talking about? The K Chronicles by Keith Knight. I'm sorry, I consider myself relatively open-minded, but I have to draw the line at purple people. I know this ain't PC, but purple people are nothing but barely civilized knuckle draggers. Believe me, I know. I sat next to one in 2nd grade. When I was growing up, a purple family moved in next door, and the whole neighborhood started to smell like Fig Newtons. And I swear this one guy was hired at my job just because he was, well, you know. I heard green folks have 3 nipples. I think I'd better be going. Me too. Be careful walking back to your car. The purple people might get you. So yeah, unless Avatar is a documentary, there are no blue people. And I know if you've seen my show now, you've heard me say this in the show. Well, I said it first anyway. We have to stop talking about green people and purple people and blue people. We have to stay in the realm of reality. And we have to understand that this country was built off the exploitation of people. And that legacy still remains. It still remains. You know, they say that the descendants of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust have a higher degree of depression and suicide because of the experience of their ancestors. So my question to you is, what happens, what are we carrying in ourselves from 400 years of oppression? What are we carrying? And what are white people carrying in themselves, being the oppressor for 400 years? And I just say, like, when you look at footage of some of these folks with their guns and screaming at people, I kind of see it. I see that legacy. Anyway, in 2008, I made the biggest mistake of my cartooning life, and I launched a daily comic strip. A daily comic strip, you say? What is that? Well, a daily comic strip used to be this really popular thing that ran in a thing called newspapers. Now, some of you kids under 50 years old may not know what a newspaper is, but it was kind of like where you got your information before the internet. Anyway, I launched it in the worst year of the newspaper industry. And so many newspapers went out of business, but I had a kid. And so I had to do it. Anyway, I'm going to show you really quickly a few of my favorite dailies. Do you think extraterrestrials are racist? Why do you ask? They never abduct people of color. It's easier to catch white people at night. Now, here's the thing I love about my fans is they're all super smart, super intelligent. And after the strip ran, they sent me all these newspaper clippings of the first couple that were abducted by aliens, the first couple in America. And it turns out that they were a mixed race couple. There was a white wife and a black husband. But I still say they got caught because of the white wife. Anyway, this is one of my more popular strips. I think my most popular, I got the most letters from this. Vent mentoring. A guy in my unit smothered an IED, took one for the team. When I got home, I went to tell his loved ones what kind of sacrifice he made. Turns out he was gay. I was the first one to let his partner know what happened. I've shared things with soldiers that I'd never tell family and friends. War does that. Here was a guy who gave his life for his fellow soldiers, but wasn't allowed to share with us who was waiting for him back home. If we're not fighting for this soldier's freedom, then what are we fighting for? So my strip, the reason why this is in color, it's a daily, and it's a Sunday strip. And my Sunday strip ran in the Washington Post. It ran in, I think, the San Francisco Chronicle, Boston Herald, and the San Diego Union Tribune. And after this strip ran, I started getting all these letters, emails from military people. And what it said was, your comic strip made me change my mind on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And this was not like, I didn't get one, I got like 20, 25 of them. And in our wildest fantasies as cartoonists, we wish we could change people's minds with our tunes. And this was evidence that it could happen. And so I just want to say that, like, again, my strip ran in the Washington Post, right? This ran in June of that year. This was the last decent president we had. And in the Oval Office, on his desk, are the Sunday comics. In October of that year, after that strip ran, he repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, I'm not saying I had anything to do with it, but the evidence is right there. Comics can change the world. Always remember that. Anyway, so in 2015, I was really frustrated about the Ferguson protests. I had been doing cartoons about police brutality for years, and I was just so sick of it. And every time I did a police brutality cartoon, I'd be like, is this my last one? Is this the last one I have to do? But I just saw this picture of this young lady here and the look on her face and just the sign. And I was like, man, I got to do something more. So I put together this slideshow called They Shoot Black People, Don't They? And it was 20 years of my police brutality cartoons. And I decided to offer it to colleges and high schools around the country. Nobody bit, but schools overseas did. In Germany, I did a tour of German colleges before I ever did anything here, which is really kind of crazy. But, and then I wrote in the press, I was like, why do I have to go to Germany to show this stuff when the big problem is here? And that's when I started getting gigs here. But this is one of my old school ones, police officer application question number 6. What do you see in this picture? Sons, brothers, fathers, human beings, or target practice. So I'm going to show you a few of my favorite ones in this. Mr. White Police Officer, how many shots does it take for 4 white officers to defend themselves against one unarmed black male? A black male, well, let's see. Blam, 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 blam. 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 Now, if you look in the corner, you see how that figure is looking at her watch? That is a trope that cartoonists use to make it feel like a lot of time is going by. Blam, 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 blam. Blam, 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 blam. 41. Don't you think that was a little excessive? Listen, you people could avoid getting into these situations if you would just lighten up. Now, if you've seen my show, that term lighten up has meaning. So 10 years after living in San Francisco, I was hanging up posters in San Francisco for my band. And as I was hanging up posters, a car pulls up behind me and a cop jumps out. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm hanging up posters. I have a black stapler here. I'm going to put it down on the ground." And he gets on the radio and he starts saying, "We have the suspect." And I said, "What suspect?" And he says, "You fit the description." I said, "What description?" He said, "Of someone who's been robbing houses in the neighborhood." And I said, "What's this description?" And he said, 6 foot tall, black male. That's it. 6 foot tall, black male. Now, at the time, I had these very poorly kept dreads, like crazy dreads that looked like just came out all crazy. And I looked just like a black sideshow Bob from The Simpsons. And like literally, that's, if I was robbing houses, people would say a black sideshow Bob had robbed my house. And so, the fact that the description is 6 foot tall black male means that they can get anybody. They can just pick up anybody. So I'm standing there and I see a cop car coming down Arguello, a cop car coming down Fulton. I look down towards the beach, a cop car coming that way. And I was just like, whoa, like, this is it. Like, this is that moment that I've been writing about for a real long time. And now I'm experiencing it. So I just was taking it in and just watching, like, just checking out people, like looking at me. And it's amazing how scared people are when they see you surrounded by cops, like, and you catch their eye, and it's like, ooh, like, don't look at me. But what was the most surprising after the cops were all there was my white roommate was on a bus up the hill, and he turned on the number 5 bus. He was coming down the hill, and he saw all these cop cars, and he's like, oh man, SFPD hassling another black man. But then he saw my hair, of course, and he was like, oh no, like, that's my black man. And the bus pulls up and he gets off the bus, and this roommate, who is not a very tall person, started bounding across the street against the traffic towards the cops. And it was slow motion, screaming bloody hell. Get the F, what the F is going on? Like crazy. So you see like 6 or 7 cops all turn around in slow motion, seeing this kid coming at him, like coming at them like, ah! And what do? They turn around and they go, take it easy, man. Take it slow. And I was like, that was, if there's a woke moment, that was it right there. Was they were treating him like he was the boss, that they were working for him. And if he had been black, if he had been brown, they would have shot him, they would have tased him, they would have beat him. But to me, that was the epitome of white privilege. And he was up in their face, and I was just like, oh my God, like, it was crazy. So that always stuck with me. And I'm so glad that I was able to use it for more than just a comic strip. And this is really the turning point in the show, in the pilot. This is another one of my favorite ones. And this is the firing range where police officers do target practice. How come all the targets are black? What do you mean? The silhouettes, they're supposed to be black. I'm talking about the afro and the FUBU logo across the chest. Well, I'll be. So, I did this in I did this in 2008 or 2009. In 2013, there was a soldier, a soldier who wanted to do target practice at her local police station. And so she called them and said, I'm a soldier, and, I'd like to practice my shooting. And they said, sure, come on by. So she goes there, a black woman, and she goes to where they shoot, they do target practice. And up in the space where the targets are were black and white blown up photographs of black teenagers that they were using for targets. And one of them was her brother as a teenager. And so when the police captain of that precinct was asked about it, he said, what we're doing is not illegal. Like, that was his excuse. So this is the mentality. And if you know the history of this country, which we don't teach at all, you know that the police grew out of slave patrols. Slave patrols were white people, poor whites, that were hired to keep control of the black population and to track down runaway slaves. And so they were deputized, and they went around policing Black and brown communities. And that's what the police is today. They do exactly what they were hired to do 200 years ago. And so what sort of, again, that thing that people carry from their ancestors, the police carry from what has gone on in the past. And we need to come to terms with that. And a lot of people just say like, well, if you just, how come you don't comply? How come people don't comply? And listen, we shouldn't have to be perfect to live. So these interactions where a trained professional officer with the law and all these weapons on their side, we're supposed to, we are supposed to look at the barrel of a gun and act completely calm, where people can excuse them pulling the trigger or freaking out and putting a neck on somebody and killing somebody. We're supposed to be the ones that are perfect. And again, we shouldn't have to be perfect to survive. A cruel joke to play on a black jogger. Thief. And then the cops show up. So this ran in Charleston, South Carolina. It ran all over the place, but I got a call from the editor there, and she said, white people are calling up and they're saying, I'm white, and even I find this racist, offensive. And white people always announce themselves when they interact. They say, well, I'm white. But so I said to the editor, I said, well, have any black people called? And he's like, no, all white people are calling. I said, you know why black people aren't calling? Because this is not racist to them. This is not offensive to them. What this is a recreation of what really happened. I said, so if you want to say something to the people calling, you tell them, like, if you complained as much about the real life incidents of cops killing black people as much as you do a comic strip, maybe something will be done. Okay. You don't blame the messenger. Okay. You don't blame. That's why, people vilified hip hop and all the music back in the day in the early 90s about about how bad cops were and everything. There's a reason why Chuck D called it the CNN of the streets, is like, because you were being informed about police brutality decades before, and no one took it seriously. And I just want to say something about hip hop and about rock and roll and about blues and jazz. If it weren't for black people, all the music you'd hear on the radio is that weird music that they play at Renaissance fairs. So appreciate the contributions of black people to this country. You're probably wondering why I stopped you. Since you're a regular, I want to give you this punch card. Every time I pull you over, you get a new punch. What happens after 10 punches? I go on paid desk duty for 3 months. So yeah, like, I don't understand why we reward bad cops with desk duty. And I don't understand, like, if any of you are parents, like, you punish your children to let them know that what they're doing is wrong. But see, we don't do that with police officers. We don't punish them. We have police unions. It's funny how everyone hates unions, but police unions, oh, we can't touch them. But honestly, if cops, well, I'll just show you this. This is just up the street from my old apartment in Los Angeles. And this is Chips. I don't know if you remember that show, Chips, but back in the day. But this is what a real Chips is like. So he's on top of a 63-year-old black grandmother who's schizophrenic, who was trying to cross the 10. And he's preventing her from crossing the 10 by throwing haymakers and punching her in the head. And if it wasn't for a person with a cell phone no one would have ever seen this guy, and he wouldn't have gotten fired and then gotten a job like just at the county over. And this is what happens when cops get fired, they just get another job at the county over. Like, that's how protected they are. In fact, in North Carolina, where I live, cops, like counties, aren't even allowed to see a cop's previous record. So they can hide. If they got fired for something, you don't even know that until they come to your county and then kill somebody else or beat up somebody else. So this guy gets fired. The family sues, and then we as taxpayers give our money to the family. I don't mind the family getting money, but here's the thing. Cops would weed out bad cops if the money that was paid out to the families came from police pensions. If you took not only the pension of the offending officer, but also his partners and the people in the precinct he's from, everybody in that precinct would point to that cop and say, get rid of him. I wanna keep my money, get rid of him. And that's the thing. We protect bad cops better than we protect good cops. And I'm not talking about the cops that don't do anything, but don't tell on bad cops, but the cops that actually stand up and actually turn in bad cops. We don't protect them at all, and they end up getting pushed out. It's crazy. So this is the thing. We don't teach Black history. Black history shouldn't be 4 or 5 feel-good stories during February. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with February. It is my busiest month, but it's like, again, the history of America, Black history is American history, and we teach nothing. And because of that, we are destined to completely repeat over and over again the issues that plague us throughout history, okay? Slavery begat sharecropping, begat the prison industrial complex. It's just a different name, okay? Here's the deal. We learned so much about the contributions of white people in this country that if white people have proof that they didn't do it, they think aliens did it. Like they couldn't think in a million years that someone other than them did it. Aliens came down and built the pyramids. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, you know, Elvis is not the king of rock and roll. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, you know, Elvis was not the king of rock and roll. No, he wasn't. Anyway, if we just sat and examined, you know, when I learned about slavery, they go over it so quickly, and they would say, oh, you know, and a lot of the slave owners treated their slaves like family. And that's all you hear. That's it. And then you hear George Washington Carver, and you hear Martin Luther King, and then we have a Black president, and everything's good. So just think about it. Imagine, okay? So imagine slavery, 339 years. And I don't know how many generations that is, but is that like 40 generations or 25 generations? I can't remember. What could you build if you had 330 years of free labor? What could you build if you had generations of free labor? You could build a pretty good business, right? You could build a country, right? And what happens when you free that labor? Like, what happens when you have 339 years of treating human beings like this pen? All right. And if you wanted to make more, you would just rape them and they would have more. And then you could sell them and do whatever. That's the thing we don't really look at. Okay. And so I was listening to the slave narratives, people that were interviewed in the 1930s, and they were talking about what happened when they were freed. And this guy was saying in Texas, like, you know, their owner came to them and said, all right, you guys are free. get off my land. And so this family was like, okay. And they went off into the town, and nobody would help them. No one would give them a place to stay. No one would feed them. No one would give them a job. And it's just like, so what happens? We were promised 40 acres and a mule. It was never gotten. In fact, reparations were given after the Civil War. Do you know who they were given to? They were given to white slave owners for losing their property. They don't teach us that. And so slavery was outlawed, but it was still legal in one way. And that was as punishment in prison. So you make laws for people who are loitering, for people who don't have a place to live, for people who don't have jobs, and you put them in jail, and then you put them on chain gangs. Reconstruction, 10 years, okay? After 10 years, politicians were saying, well, we've had enough of Reconstruction. Those 339 years, the 10 years wiped it out. Now, this is a pencil, okay? Okay, it took me a second to break it. Now, to fix it, it takes a lot longer to fix that pencil. So if you break something for 339 years and take 10 years to fix it, that doesn't really work, does it? Everything we break, it always takes way longer to fix. But we have a country that does not want to even acknowledge it. And so what happened after 10 years of Reconstruction? There were all these crazy laws that, you know, it never said, like, it was basically, you know, separate but equal, like segregation and all this stuff. But, you know, you have a drinking fountain and you guys have a trough, and just everything across the board. And then there was all this violence, and, you know, it was like Rosewood and Tulsa, and talk about comics saving the world. Like, it took The Watchmen and this new Watchmen series for most of America to learn about the Tulsa massacres. You know, when I moved to North Carolina is when I found out about the Wilmington, North Carolina massacre, which happened in, I think, 1898, I think. And it was basically white people that were just mad at Black people being in politics and having this successful city where Blacks and whites work together. So they just went there and killed everybody. And so we don't learn any of that stuff because America is always right and there's nothing wrong with it and you shouldn't complain. And listen, the reason why I am a prequel denier and the world's foremost prequel denier is because I care about Star Wars very much. And if I didn't care about it, I wouldn't criticize it. And so that's why I criticize America. So the Racial Equity Institute in North Carolina has this great analogy about Monopoly, which is, imagine if a bunch of Black people were playing Monopoly for like 2 hours and then white people came in and they turned to them and said, hey, like, do you want to play? And the white people were like, well, I mean, you guys own all the railroads and you own the hotels and motels and all this different stuff. And the Black people were like, wait a second, I started out with $200. We're giving you $200. What's the problem? And so that's the situation that we find ourselves in America, which is whites have established themselves here in America and have had the ability to raise capital and buy land and do all this stuff. And Black people have not had that opportunity. That's why if we had 40 acres and a mule, then we would have been able to do that, but that never happened. And so even Black people who went to fight World War I and World War II, like, they went to fight for the rights of people in other places, and they didn't even have those rights when they came home. In fact, some of the soldiers that they fought with, white soldiers, when they ended up coming back to the South, those soldiers oppressed and beat and went after them when they got back to the South, which is insane. So why not we tell these stories? Why don't we tell these stories? And they're not all big downer stories. Why don't we tell the stories of Robert Smalls? Robert Smalls was a slave in South Carolina. He was a slave there. He stole a Confederate ship by dressing up as his captain and learning all the secret codes, and then sailed past all these Confederate ships to he picked up his family on the way, and then sailed to the Union ships. And then he went and convinced Abraham Lincoln to use freedmen in the Union Army. Then he went back after the war was over and bought his own house that he grew up a slave in. And then when his the slave owner's wife got out of a mental institution, he let her sleep in her old bedroom until she died, which is like insanely forgiving, insanely forgiving. It's a great story. Also, Josephine Baker. A lot of people know Josephine Baker as like this, Parisian French nudie star. She left the United States to get away from the racism and went to Paris and became a huge star. But she was also a spy. She was a spy in World War II, which is like this amazing story. And like these are all just like stories that we should be learning. But another thing is just to understand this is part of America. This is lynchings that have went on into the 60s, and they were gatherings they were celebrations. So when people talk about ISIS videos and stuff like that, these were ISIS videos. These were the original ISIS videos, frankly. Like photos were taken, they were put on postcards, and they were mailed across the United States. And you're like, why? Why would anyone do that? Why would anybody do this? And look at the looks of everybody in these pictures, okay? They're having a great time. There are children in there. And these children grow up to be politicians, they grow up to be teachers, they grow up to be businessmen. So if they are growing up seeing this, do you think it's amazing to me, because like this shows how proves is prevalent how white supremacy is, which is there are people who are running businesses who are the most racist people in the world, and they will never hire a person of color, and they've never interacted with a person of color. They can make that choice. They can be the most successful person in America and not have to treat any person that doesn't look like them as a decent person. Now, me as a person of color, I have to treat white people. I would be nothing if I didn't treat people decently, all people decently. And so like people who are this cruel should not have businesses, should not exist. Now, this is the same as this. This is the same as this. This is on a cell phone. And when you have a police officer who knows he's being recorded, and he's got a hand in his pocket, and he's looking at you, and he's got a look on his face saying, nothing is going to happen to me. Absolutely nothing is going to happen to me. That is a problem. And we have let this problem go on for far too long. And it's not anything that's new. It's gone on forever. The only reason why is we have cell phones now. We're seeing it now. But you think about this happens all the time. And here's the thing, it's not just murder. For every murder like this, there are thousands of just people just going, like being stopped and being frisked and being treated like just trash. And honestly, that's what happened to me. And so we need to punish, we need to fire, we need to keep people away like this who are willing to not protect and serve and to kill people at will, like, which is like, this isn't a big deal. The All Lives Matter crew, here's the deal. Like, when I have a bumper sticker on the back of my car that says save the rainforest, it doesn't mean F the other forests. If I have a save the whale sticker, it doesn't mean F dolphins. It means that Black lives are valued less. And we know that, like, while the founding fathers were writing all men created equal, I was 3/5 of a person. So just because they say it, we know what they do. There's a difference between saying and doing. And when people talk about looting and everything, I will say this. These folks don't get arrested like they should. The cops should have been arrested right away. The cops that let it happen should have been arrested right away. It took a bunch of riots, a bunch of crazy stuff to happen for them to charge the officer with something less than third-degree murder. I've never heard of third-degree murder, by the way. After those riots, the other cops got arrested. After those riots, the LAPD had their funding cut. After the riots, Confederate statues came down. After the riots, people started to consider the effects of everything that's going on in this country as far as like oppressing people. People started to look at sort of, okay, so why is the wealth of a Black family 200 years behind a white family? And part of it is the GI Bill back in the day. Like, Black folks couldn't get the low-cost loans to get a new house. And so white families were able to build wealth. They were able to go to state schools that people that look like me couldn't go. And so you build wealth, and that's how you do it. And so it's not about just, oh, well, you're going to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We never had bootstraps to pull ourselves up. And folks who say, well, Martin Luther King did it peacefully. Martin Luther King, this is a comic strip that came out during Martin Luther King's time. And it's the same thing. We repeat the same thing, but we don't teach it. Martin Luther King did everything peaceful and nothing happened to him. Sure, he didn't go to jail for it. Oh, sure, he wasn't assassinated because of his stance. How can you say he was did it the right way and he was assassinated? It's completely insane. So yeah, I'm so psyched to see some of this stuff come down, but really this stuff is, why do we even have Confederate statues? It's like, what are those called? Participation trophies. That's what I call them. And my wife is German. She's like, it's kind of like if they built, statues to Goebbels and Hitler. Like, yeah, like let's see, let's celebrate them. Like, what? But so why don't you? Why can't people do it peacefully? It's just like, here's the thing: oppressors don't change because the oppressed act really nice and mellow. So this, here's a guy who acts really nice and mellow, and what do? Is they ban him from the league. Okay, that's like, never has the oppressed. The American Revolution. What was the Boston Tea Party? Except a bunch of people who dressed up like Native Americans, and then they destroyed all this product. They dumped all this tea, and people are complaining because we knocked out and broke the glass at McDonald's. So, and listen, everybody couldn't stand this guy either back in the day when he was protesting, and now everyone loves him. So this leads us to the end of the talk. And so I made a TV show, and it just premiered last week. And this is me in the apartment. It was very exciting for me. It was a culmination of many years of hard work and a ton of luck and being surrounded by a lot of creative people. This is a few of them: Blake Anderson, T. Murph on the end there, and then Mo Marable with the coffee there. And he was the one that was like, you know what? I don't want to do 2D animation. Let's do puppetry and all this cool stuff. And so it elevated the stuff. And he is just such an amazing visual person. There's all these Easter eggs all through it. It's really cool. We didn't shoot it in San Francisco, unfortunately. We shot it in Vancouver because San Francisco is too expensive, but we had plenty of props to make it look like San Francisco. I wish I could have taken this. I wish I could have stolen this and put it up in my room, but yeah, it couldn't fit in my baggage. Lamorne Morris here on the left plays me, and there's Blake who plays Gunther. And Gunther was the toughest person the toughest role to fill. But then we heard Blake Anderson was interested in it, and we were like, wow, that's amazing. We'll never get him. And but he really dug it, and like he is like the perfect Gunther. It's pretty amazing. But look at this guy in the cop outfit standing here, by the way. Like, we're not shooting for another 2 hours, and look how look what putting on a uniform gets you. Look how mean he looks. Anyway, this is the tale of 2 viral emails. One is about a bumper sticker. The other is about a kid that looks like me. Racism in America is like that big pile of dog poop that sits on the grass in front of your apartment building. It's been there for as long as you can remember, and nobody knows how it got there. Nobody wants it there, yet no one wants to clean it up. They say, why should I? I didn't leave it there. Soon you just accept it. You do your best to avoid and or ignore it. It's that pile of poop that allows someone like Trayvon Martin to be murdered while his killer walks. The flies that are attracted to that poop are the people who put "Don't Renege" bumper stickers on their vehicles. I don't care about the flies, just clean up the poop. So right now, we are watching a lot of poop, and we are watching a lot of flies being attracted to that poop. All the flies are coming out. And if you know anything about history, the person in office right now is the flexback, is the majority making a statement saying to the Black population, you think you got something? Well, guess what? And they're saying, you need somebody who's absolutely perfect, like who has never had a scandal, who has a perfect family and all this stuff. And the white population is saying, we will give you the most immoral, like, just like terrible, morally corrupt, I don't know, 3 marriage, porn star, mess of a human being. And we'll show you, we will give him the most powerful position in the world, even if it hurts us. We are watching this country burn. And yet we're worried about this guy getting back in again. That's how low we've gotten, that there are people out there going, well, you know, my taxes are I saved some $1,000 in taxes, so I'm going to vote for him again. Like literally, like people don't see the forest for the trees because it's burning, And I'm just hoping, listen, if everybody votes and he gets in again, I'm fine with that. I'm fine. If people choose to vote him back in, then we deserve to burn. But like, if he wins because everybody's, you know, like they're thrown off voter rolls and everything's closing and they're screwing with the post office, that I have a problem with. And my question to you is, what are you going to do about it? I ask of you, like, because right now we're in a fight, and when people sit there and go, well, I'm not racist, I don't teach my children to be racist, that's not good enough. You have to be actively anti-racist. It's kind of like littering. If you say, oh, I don't litter, I teach my kids not to litter, that does not mean that we don't need to go to the beaches and clean it up. We don't need to go to forests and not volunteer to clean up, because there are systems in place that allow people to pollute like crazy. So it's not just about you, it's about the system that we're in. So we have to break that system. And so I am asking all of you to step up and do the right thing. There are plenty of podcasts and books and stuff to read and stuff to be, and just have that conversation. A lot of people think, well, I'm afraid, I don't want to step on anybody's foot. Like it gets easier the more you do it, and you're gonna make mistakes, and but have the conversation. I guarantee you, if you talk to a Black person over 65 for more than 10 minutes, you will learn more about Black history than you ever had in any school you ever went to. And I'm talking about Black folks too, because there are a lot of things that the elders in your family don't want to tell you, because it's harsh, it's ugly, but it's good to know and to understand that. My mom was a sharecropper. She got paid pennies a day to pick cotton. And if she didn't pick enough, she was beaten. So her older sister would pick extra to give to her so she wouldn't get beaten. Like, those are the stories that we need to hear. Those are the things that we need to hear. It's so important. Hey, listen, if you ever wondered what you would do if you were alive in the civil rights movement, now is the time to find out. Now, right now. And I'm seeing people in my existence that I'm cutting loose. I'm cutting loose because they don't really, they don't care about me. And so sometimes that's the harsh reality of it. Anyway, thank you. If you have any questions, Ulysses, if you have any questions, let's start gabbing for a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And my hope is that that some questions come in via the YouTube channel. I mean, I don't blame people for having not had them ready to go, because every time I hear you, Keith, it's absolutely riveting. And you can't hear what you have to say without starting to think about it and internalize it, because so much of what you said, and I had to take some notes while I was going along, because it comes down to these uncomfortable conversations that you mentioned, and also about perspective, because quite frankly, if you happen to be a Caucasian person in the United States, there have been a lot of things that you just haven't had to think about. I mean, as a African-American male in this country, I think about what I do and what I say every day of the week, I mean, and in some ways, I have some sympathy for somebody like a Trent Lott, former senator from South Carolina, who very famously ran afoul of the media because he was complimenting Strom Thurmond and talking about how his party had nominated, the Dixiecrats had nominated Strom Thurmond to run for president. And he said, hey, if y'all had followed our lead, we wouldn't be in this mess. Now, I don't know how many times he related this anecdote, probably thousands. And then one day the social landscape changed to where he opened his mouth and this came out, and everybody was shocked. And so, I mean, as things change, I do have a certain degree of sympathy, because, hey, one of these days you say some crazy racist stuff and it's going to splash back on you. But my first question for you is, because you are so aware and so knowledgeable and talking about these uncomfortable things, particularly now that the show has come out, and one would expect that your platform is going to grow as a result of that. Do you worry about what you're saying? Because, they're going to be coming to burn a cross on your lawn, brother, man. And I'm only half joking when I say that.
I know. I don't. I honestly believe that people, I think that everybody actually wants to know the truth, and we just can't couch it. Like, people just got to understand, like, if we want to get better as a country, like, we have to talk it out, not just talk it out, but we really have to change the system. So we have to teach, instead of American literature should not just be Mark Twain. Like, I want to see James Baldwin taught as much as Mark Twain is taught, I think back about, I got more books in school where the protagonists were animals than I got people of color, you know? So I got Animal Farm, I got Beowulf, I got like, what's the Jack London books and stuff like that.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
wasn't until, I didn't realize it until I was,
Call of the Wild.
yeah, Call of the Wild, until I went back to school to talk about, they were having the Hate U Give like 2 years ago. And I was like, man, I wish I had a book where people that looked like me were in it too. You know, people would always say, oh, Catcher in the Rye, you'll totally relate to this. This is such a, you know, seminal novel and all this stuff. And it's like, I don't care about this. Like, I have no, you know, it's okay to teach that, but also like, you got to have something else. And it's so important, I think, for everybody to have different teachers, teachers of color, Asian teachers, Native American teachers, like of people, kids of all races, students should have diverse teachers and a diverse curriculum. People's history in the United States. If you read the first 10 pages of Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States, you will understand why Christopher Columbus, in his own words, by the way, should not have a holiday dedicated to him. Like, he was a for lack of a better word, was an a-hole and a terrible human being. And it's like the fact that we grow up with these, I call them fairy tales, American fairy tales, like the Pilgrims, and having this wonderful meal with the Native Americans and all this, you know, it's all fairy tales. And it's pop music. That's what it is. You know how you just pop music, there's no way you can avoid sort of hearing like the newest, I don't know, the newest whatever, the newest Taylor Swift. Like, even if I don't want to hear it, I know it because I have no choice. I'm going to hear it all the time. But the good music, you have to dig in the crates for. And it's the same with history. You have to dig in the crates for the real history. It's like digging in the crates is a hip hop term where you're finding like the deep cuts and the choice. And that's the way, like Robert Smalls is not the pop music of history. You got to dig in the crates for that. I hear it though, that's being made into a movie maybe, but there's so many amazing stories to be told. And so people need to get out there and check it out. You have to make an effort. Like, that's the thing, is people want stuff served to them so easily. And that's why, like, it's fast food. We can all get, you know, hamburger and french fries really easy, but to get like real good healthy food, you have to dig in the crates for it. Like, literally the farmers crates for it. It's not easy. And so we have to do that. We have to get to the idea that it's not going to be given to us in an easy way. But
okay, real quick, because we have a question, but I just
Okay.
want to make a correction because I always make this mistake. Trent Lott was from Mississippi, not South Carolina. So
okay.
yeah, a couple of these, because as so many people are talking about what a wonderful presentation it is, what a beautiful educator you are, how riveted they were, and the appreciation for your approach to how race is discussed. But question is, and this is from Claire Folkman, who asks, since you've worked in so many mediums, what artistic vehicle do you think has the ability to change the most minds? Newspaper comics versus graphic novels versus literature versus TV, etc.
Oh,
So that's our
well,
first question.
I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I think it has to be like all across. I always felt like whenever we were advertising a show or something, that you had to hit people in 2 or 3 different ways for it to really register. And so we need, you know, there's not just one way that's effective. I understand that that TV is a much bigger venue than where I was before, newspapers and stuff, but it's a different way of doing it. It's a much more expensive way of doing it. But I think it's a combination of everything. And in order to change just your worldview and your ideas and stuff, you have to do it from the ground up. You have to do it in books. There were books out there. There are podcasts out there. I have a list of stuff that I can send out to people. So if anyone wants to inquire at Keef at kchronicles.com, KEEF at kchronicles.com, I can give you that list of all these different places and books and podcasts and essays and all that stuff. But it's the movies we watch, it's the television we see, it's the books we read, it's the podcasts we listen to, and it's everything. We have to think about, no more happy slave movies. It drives me crazy, the happy slave movies, where if they said it, it's like The Patriot, that Mel Gibson movie where he's the hero in it, so like but it's during that time, and so the slaves are all happy around him, and that stuff just drives me insane, because it makes people walk up to me after shows and go, what about the Irish? The Irish suffered too, like they had it as bad. And then I have to tell them about, what about the Middle Passage? Do you know what the Middle Passage is? And they're like, no. It's like, well, this is how they brought Africans over across the Atlantic Ocean. And, I described to them how they laid them down like sardines, and like the vomit and the poop and the sickness. And when people gave birth, like throw babies over the side and stuff. And they did it with the idea of knowing that most of them wouldn't survive, but the ones that did survive would go at a great price, and they would rip families away from each other. They'd destroy their names, and if they try to learn anything, they would, be branded and amputate things and amputated and stuff like that. Like that did not happen to the Irish. So please don't compare the Irish experience to the African experience. And again, we built this country, and it wasn't just in the South. Colleges up north owned slaves too. The first slave patrol that we know was in Charleston, Massachusetts. Listen, I don't even believe Crispus Attucks was the first victim of the Revolutionary War. I think white folks from Boston shot him, and then they blamed the British. I don't believe any of it anymore. But there's so much that we need to, and we may not have all the records, but we have enough evidence that to really have. The 1619 project is a great project, but it's just like, look at what the president wants to do. He wants to get rid of it because, it's just like, I think these past 4 years, I think there are people in this country that are realizing, I think I really do like my status in this, and I don't want to lose where I am right now. So maybe I am prejudiced. I never thought I was, but it's not too bad. Like I think people are coming to that conclusion, and it's a very sad state of affairs. But let me know. And people are showing me where they're at, and I just don't think. I think people are afraid. That I understand, fear drives a lot of people, but, never gain anything without facing fear. And so people have to rise up. People have to be better. So,
yeah. Yes, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Well, all right.
Yeah.
No, you first, and then me.
I just want people to understand, like, to start to redefine things. Okay. And look at things, stuff is not racially charged. It's racist. Start using the right language for things. What's his name? Was it Thomas Jefferson? Who was the one with the mistress? Who was the one with the mistress?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson, because I was going to say something about that. People insist on referring to Sally Hemings as his mistress, but as his property. She did not have the ability to consent.
Yeah.
And so
exactly. Stop calling,
all about perspective.
Yeah. Stop calling her his mistress. That is his property. Yeah. And that's, Barack Obama was not, so many people talk about Barack Obama being this, he's the first Black president. Oh, it's a Black accomplishment. It is not a Black accomplishment. It is a white accomplishment, because there have been plenty of Black people in the past that could have been president, that were worthy of being president.
True.
But white people would never vote for them. So it's a white accomplishment that white folks came around and were able to vote a person of color in office. So pat yourselves on the back, white people. That is a white accomplishment. So.
You ready to take another question?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is, and I apologize, I'm going to mess your name up, but Zris Parcell, who asks, with the demise of so many independent newspapers, what do you think will replace them as a platform for independent and alternative cartoonists?
It's really places like Patreon, who, where you get to create your own subscription service, and you get people to subscribe and follow your stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's right now the new way to go. If I, ever ended up being in some sort of leadership position, I would break up every gigantic corporation, and I would return to the laws and regulations that kept corporations from owning, tons of TV stations, tons of radio stations, and give them back to individuals. So we would have independent media. We would bring back jobs. So you didn't see the same story on a million different places. That would be so important. And I want people to understand too, that with media, all media is biased. All media is created. So don't think that there's something out there that is completely balanced, and all media is biased, inherently biased. So don't act like there's some deviant thing about biases and stuff. You have to understand what different media outlets are doing, and go into it understanding that. So, a place like MSNBC is like, that's sort of the lefty progressive thing. And a place like Fox News is there to anger white people. It's to scare and anger white people. And as long as you understand that, then you move forward. Like that's, but you can't sit there and go, oh, well, this is not biased or this is not biased. It's all biased. There are editors who say, we're going to run this photo with this story. We're going to run this thing at the bottom that will say, and it's, a masterclass and stuff is watching Fox News, because at the bottom will say, do Democrats have sex with goats? Like with a question mark. And they're not saying, they're just asking the question. Now the question can be no, but just the fact that it's there makes people go, Democrats are having sex with goats? It's like, it's this bizarre, and I think that goes to being, I think the country needs to be taught media literacy, and financial literacy, and racial literacy, which is what I want to teach. I went to a class at the University of Delaware. It was called Race, and it was an amazing class, and every high school and every college should teach that.
Okay. Here's another one from Joe Sutliff. What 3 books would you recommend to high school English teachers for their classes?
What 3 books? I would say, definitely has to be a James Baldwin in there. Just I would just go down YouTube holes with James Baldwin, just watching black and white, him with a cigarette talking, just knowledge. But I'm gonna send you, again, this is on that list. Like I can't tell you off the top of my head, but there's plenty of these books on this list that I have, that I would say. And I just wish there were more graphic novels out there of some of these books, because if I was assigned comics as a person in school, because I barely read any books. I read Animal Farm. That was like my favorite book that I read. It was the first book I read from back to front, front to back. But yeah, please email me at keef@kchronicles.com to get that list. But I have a great Josephine Baker graphic novel that I got last year or 2 years ago from SBX, because they always have like these European creators and companies come in, and they do some really great stuff overseas, especially in France.
Okay, here's another one. This is from Kirota Wilberg. Do you make comics to reach a specific audience, or are you trying to reach as broad an audience as possible?
Well, I create comics that I want to read. I create TV that I want to see. I create music that I want to hear. So, and I just know that I'm not so unique that it's not going to appeal to, I think, a decent amount of people. So, I know that with the K Chronicles, it runs in alternative weeklies and, online, so I can be a little blue with it. When I ran the nightlife, when I did the nightlife, I loved working in a daily format where you couldn't just go blue. You had to be very challenging with how you did stuff. I loved the format. Just the deadlines were just killer. But, it's, I never do it with the idea of what the audience is. The audience is me. And so if I can make myself laugh or think, then I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
Okay. Patricia F. Anderson says, I'm with Kirota. I had lynching nightmares in high school, was flunked when I wrote about them in American history class. And the question is, so many stories to tell. What about #own voices? What about whites lifting stories up?
Yeah. I mean, what about just being able to listen? Because I think sometimes there are a lot of people that aren't used to listening to. I think it's easier for a lot of white people to hear about racism from white people, and that's why it's they just feel more comfortable about it, and it's time to feel uncomfortable. It's time to have that uncomfortable conversation and to let people that don't look like you speak, because they will tell you, and I say this all the time, everyone should tell their own story. Tell your own story, because if you don't, someone else will tell it for you, and they'll get it wrong. And I always think about this interview that Denzel Washington talked about, and I don't know. I think it was about Malcolm X, and how Spike Lee fought to do the Malcolm X movie because they were going to get a white director to do it. And, the white director probably could have done an okay job, but it just would have been different. And Denzel Washington said, listen, a black filmmaker could do an Italian mafia movie, but there's no doubt that Martin Scorsese is going to do a better job at doing an Italian mafia movie than somebody different. And so in that sense, it makes sense that Spike Lee is going to do something that's going to be a bit, I think, more interesting than a white director doing Malcolm X. And just for folks out there who sit there and say, oh, I'm not racist. I have a black, whatever. I have a black friend, a black I had a black roommate. I had a black dog. I would never say, I would never say to a woman, like, I'm not sexist. Like, I'm married to a woman. I have sisters. Like, I would never do that. So don't do that. You can be racist and have black friends and be married to a Latino husband or something like that. So please don't say silly things like that.
You know, sometimes it's just, I'm going to say this, I got another question to read. It's about perspective. And there was a little privilege quiz that I found online. And just for, you know, laughs, I decided to take it. But what I got of value from it was realizing that I had never faced persecution because of my sexual orientation or because of my religious beliefs. And there's so many people who face persecution for those things every day. And particularly if you are a member of the dominant culture and haven't had to consider some things and haven't had to face persecution potentially because of your race, you know, or your sex, you know, I mean, you know, the patriarchy being what it is, it can change your perspective. And so because something doesn't exist for you, I think the tendency is to sort of imagine that this thing doesn't exist, you know, and you know, I think everybody could benefit from stepping out of their own shoes and stepping into somebody else's. In any case, okay, so Lorenzo G. DMV says, it's amazing how some people are fans of the X-Men, but can't put two and two together when it comes to racism. What would you say is the disconnect?
Well, it's that thing, you know, I just, the whole term of like, why is everything going to be about race? Like, again, white people have made everything about race, and in everything. You can give me any aspect of American life, and I could give you like a racial take on it. You know, whether it's I don't know, baseball. Like baseball, you know, Jackie Robinson was not the first black player. Like they used to have blacks used to play with whites in the 1800s, but it was after Reconstruction that they banned blacks from baseball. That was one of the things that came down off of that. But if you talk about like buying a car, black people are charged an average of $700 more. The car salesman will charge them an average of $700 more. I was just watching. I just saw a story about a mixed race couple, and they were getting their house, you know, when it
Renovated. Appraised. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
And you know, they said this certain price, and then they removed all evidence of a black person living there, and just had white stuff up, and he was the only person there, and then it was appraised higher. Like everything. Race is in absolutely everything. Why is the NBA logo a white man? Like, why every late night television show has like a mediocrely talented host, and then there's a sidekick, a black musician sidekick that is far more talented than the host, who is funny and can play music and is like, you can't tell me that Questlove couldn't do a better Tonight Show than Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon should be the comedian that just warms up the audience, like between commercials. And if you don't believe that, I mean, watch the Beastie Boys interview where Questlove is asking all this amazing stuff of the Beastie Boys, and Jimmy Fallon's like picking up his Beastie Boys album, going, look, like it's so obvious, and you know, but we just accept it. I mean, we don't all accept it, but I'm just looking forward to the time, you know, we just need to get into positions of big gatekeepers. So even when it comes to television, you know, I want to be able to sell a show with black protagonists that aren't couched in oppression and racism. You know, it'd be great if it was just a wonderful, joyous, you know, sound of music. Well, there was oppression in that, right? Like some, you know, some just celebration of whatever, you know. It's interesting. It's all very interesting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But race is in everything.
No, sometimes there's also sex. It's about, the other thing is about sex. I mean,
Oh,
but it's
yeah.
either about race or it's about sex, and that's
Yeah.
either what people are doing or what and who they're doing it with, or what sex you happen to be.
Oh,
You know, I mean,
certainly so. Yeah, certainly so. If you compare, like, if you have a hard time understand, because, people get all bent out of shape. So if you put it in a different perspective, that's why I say the sexism thing is you could be married to a woman and be a sexist. And if you're
most men are.
yeah, and if you're wondering what privilege is, like, we have male privilege. We can walk across a campus at night and we don't have to freak out about some dude who's gonna attack us. And then if he's, some dude at Stanford and the judge looks like him, he'll get a couple of months and say, well, she's 17,
We don't want to ruin his life.
Yeah, we don't want to
for
ruin
20
his life.
minutes of action.
Exactly. Yeah. And any other questions?
Well, okay. I have one. It looks like we have reached the end of the questions that the panelists are asking. But and you may not know this yet because everything is still so new with this. But so season 1 of Hulu's Woke by Keith Knight was 8 episodes.
Yeah.
Assuming that, because for right now, you're the flavor of the month, bro. I mean, this is okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I looked like another question was coming in, but do you have any reason to think that season 2 will maybe be more episodes, or do you know yet?
No, I think they were really. I think what they found was 10 episode seasons. The viewership dropped after number 8 for previous comedies. So that's, the statistics show that 8 episodes was the sweet spot. And I personally, I know that over in Britain, 6 episodes are normal, for a season. So I think 8 episodes is a sweet spot. I think it's a good amount of episodes, and it's like a long movie. So it's like 3 hours or something like that. So I like working in that wheelhouse.
Cool. All right. Well, look. All right. So I understand that the next session has started, and we've been going for a while. I don't want to tire you out, and I'm sure there's something else you're doing. I will just throw out to our audience that even now, Keith happens to be appearing on my radio show, Fantastic Forum, on WERA 96.7 FM and available streaming via WERA.FM. The show came on at 4, but it's on till 5. And let me tell you something. He is in rare form. So as soon as we get done with this, I want you to tune over to WERA.FM and check out the rest of that. And so yes, Keith.
Also later on tonight, I'm going to be doing an Instagram live with Lamorne Morris, who plays the character.
Who plays you.
Inspired by me. So we're going to be on Instagram live together tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So I have to learn how to do Instagram live over the next 2 hours.
Oh, we better let you go. Hey, what are some of your other either interviews that are coming up? And I absolutely would like you to call out your Patreon and other means that people can reach you, because I know that they are absolutely fascinated by what you have had to say here and would like to find out more about you and your work.
Yeah, there's kchronicles.com, which is my longtime website. But also, if you go to my Patreon, it's under Keith Knight, KEEF, KNIGHT, and which is the character in the show. But, I always used KEEF because it's easier to type. And there are so many Keith Knights out there that it's best to just be Keith Knight. But, check out my Patreon, check out my website, and just jump on and check out my comics. And I thank everybody for coming on and just hearing me rant for an hour.
Well, it's a lot more than a rant. And I'm going to throw in, and be sure to watch Woke on Hulu, because if you haven't seen it, it's really great television. And obviously there is a dearth of that. So, support Keith and Hulu and Woke. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.